I was just 18 when I decided to try my luck on Tinder. It was almost 2018, and Tinder was the hottest app out there. Nearly every young person I knew was on it, swiping away in hopes of finding someone special or just for fun. I wasn't exactly a knockout beauty, but as a young 5 feet 3 inches blonde, I did get quite a bit of attention from guys. Growing up, I had a couple of boyfriends in middle school, but I always felt like I wanted someone older, someone who knew what they were doing with their life. Most guys my age seemed lost, with no clear direction or ambition, and that was a big turnoff for me. I wanted confidence, someone who stood out, not just by looks but by their actions and the way they carried themselves. With those thoughts in mind, I turned to Tinder, thinking it would be the perfect place to find the right guy. I didn't sign up the day I turned 18, but just a few days later, I set up my profile, picked my best pictures, and wrote a simple bio. Then I started swiping, waiting for a flood of matches and messages. It was exciting, almost addictive, to sift through profiles and pick out guys who I thought might be a good match. My friends were just as caught up in it, loving the attention and the thrill of the chase. After a while, I matched with a bunch of guys who seemed cool, and not just after a quick fling. I wasn't interested in the guy for his money or his car. I wanted someone real, someone who could be more than just a date. Finally, after much swiping and chatting, I chose one guy to meet. His name was James. He was 24 tall and had the skater vibe that I found pretty cool. We hit it off on Tinder, and soon I was overwhelmed with messages. Not a boast, but it's a whole different world for girls on Tinder. I've seen videos showing just how crazy it gets. To keep in touch with James without getting lost in a sea of messages, I moved our chat to Telegram and eventually felt comfortable enough to share my phone number. We video chatted, and I was relieved to see he looked just like his pictures. It's common to find people trying too hard on Tinder, either by editing their photos too much or pretending to be something they're not. But James seemed genuine. We decided to meet up, initially planning to go to a coffee shop, but honestly, dating nowadays feels so rare, especially the old school way of meeting people outside of apps. My parents used to tease me about how my generation does everything online, and it's true. My friends and I would spend hours chatting on Snapchat, but hardly meet in person, except maybe at school or college. With James, though, it felt different. I actually wanted to meet him, thinking this could turn into something real. But the idea of a coffee shop date made me uneasy, so I suggested we change plans. I could sense his disappointment or maybe nervousness through his messages, like he was afraid I'd lose interest. Eventually, we settled on grabbing pizza on a Friday night. He mentioned he worked but didn't say where, and I didn't ask. I was just looking forward to finally meeting him. That Friday evening, when James came to pick me up, my heart was racing. Despite my nerves, our video calls had given me a sense of comfort with him. He was exactly as he had presented himself online, tall, confident, and incredibly polite. It felt like a breath of fresh air compared to guys I had known before. James seemed to blend the best of both worlds, and I was genuinely excited to be with him. We went to grab pizza, choosing to sit outside the shop on some chairs they had set up. It was a cold winter night, around 8 degrees Celsius, but dry, and sitting outside felt just right. I had told him about my anxiety, and he seemed to understand, making the effort to make me comfortable rather than opting for the direct face-to-face setup of a coffee shop date. It was a relief, really, given my past experiences where getting any real attention or eye contact was rare. After finishing our pizza, we decided to take a walk. The area around us was known for its scenic paths, and even though it was dark, we picked a well-lit park path to walk down. It felt safe, especially with James by my side. However, the stories you hear about people taking advantage of others lingered in the back of my mind, casting a shadow of doubt over the safety I felt. The path was illuminated by streetlights, making it not so much a trail, but more of a lit walkway through the park. The ambience was perfect for a leisurely stroll, allowing us to talk more and get to know each other better. Despite the lingering fear of the unknown, being with James made me feel protected, as if nothing could go wrong. As we walked around a local park, which had a playground, a running track, and even a skate park, the atmosphere was peaceful. We chose a park for our walk to avoid the crowded and noisy streets of the town, especially since it was Friday night. and many people were likely out drinking. It was around 8:30 or 9 p.m., and our conversation flowed easily, making me feel even more connected to James. He seemed truly special. But then, our peaceful walk took a turn. Ahead of us, we spotted a man who seemed to be homeless. He was a sight, whistling to himself, holding a can of beer and a box of all things, and clumsily spilling it on himself as he attempted to drink. His appearance was disheveled, with frizzy white or gray hair, and it looked as if he hadn't cleaned himself in months. The scene was unsettling, like something out of a bygone era of hardship. Suddenly, the man made a move towards us. James quickly reacted, pulling me aside to avoid any interaction. His instinct to protect me was evident, and I felt a rush of gratitude. We attempted to walk around the man, hoping to simply steer clear of him, assuming he was just another unfortunate soul lost to alcohol's grasp on a Friday night. However, our efforts to avoid him failed as he began to walk directly towards us, his whistling growing louder and almost aggressive. Then, in a startling turn, he started running at us, beer spilling everywhere as he dropped his box. James acted swiftly, grabbing me, and we both ran toward the car. The man's attempt to chase us was clumsy and slow, his drunken state causing him to zigzag across the grass, eventually causing him to fall. Looking back on the safety of the car, the sight of the man lie on the ground was both a relief and a chilling reminder of the night's unexpected horror. In that moment, I realized the importance of James's decision to flee rather than confront the man. It was a choice that prioritized our safety over confrontation, a decision I was deeply thankful for. In the days that followed, James and I went on more dates, but the relationship didn't develop further. Despite this, I couldn't help but feel thankful for his actions that night. It was a stark reminder of the unpredictability of life and the importance of being with someone who prioritizes safety. A few weeks after I started using a dating app, I received a message from a man who seemed almost like the perfect match for me. He had a 99% match rate with me, the highest I'd seen, and he lived just a few miles away. His first message was different from anything I had received before. He asked, "How do you feel about string theory?" This was a breath of fresh air after weeks of boring messages like, "Hey, how are you?" I was immediately intrigued by his approach, and we hit it off from there. We began chatting online, adding each other on social media, and soon we planned to meet in person the following weekend. We seemed to connect on so many levels. When the day of our date arrived, I was nervous but excited. He was waiting for me outside the restaurant, and he was more handsome than I had imagined. I consider myself smart and funny, and although I'm not thin, I've always been confident about my looks. I described myself as curvy on my dating profile. That evening, we had dinner and talked for hours, not realizing the restaurant had closed. We were so absorbed in our conversation that time flew by. As we left the restaurant, I realized the date was coming to an end. Despite his obvious interest, I doubted whether someone as fit and attractive as he was could really like someone like me. But as we reached my car, instead of a quick goodbye, he pulled me close and kissed me. We spent the rest of the night together, lost in the moment. Our connection grew stronger with each date, and it was clear we had amazing physical chemistry. He was everything I had dreamed of finding in a partner, tall, handsome, and charming. Despite my insecurities, it seemed he was genuinely interested in me, not just for my looks but for who I was. After a few dates, I couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief that he was interested in me. Despite knowing I was attractive, I couldn't help but feel that maybe I was just his type, different from a usual preference for skinny blonde models. Encouraged by how well we got along, I decided to take the initiative and plan our next date. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop and then take a walk in a nearby forest. The forest was dense and quiet, a stark contrast to the bustling city where we lived. As we walked, the conversation flowed easily, but there was an underlying tension. The isolated, eerie setting of the forest added a sense of foreboding to our meeting. Little did I know, this date would take a turn unlike any other, leading us into a situation neither of us could have anticipated. As the days passed, my feelings for this man grew stronger. I found myself thinking about him all the time, wondering how I could make our relationship last. I had just ended a difficult marriage and was eager for a fresh start. This new connection felt like a light at the end of a long, dark tunnel. It was a sunny afternoon around 2 or 3 p.m. when we decided to meet at a coffee shop. We sat outside, enjoying our drinks and each other's company. I can't recall the exact details of our coffees, but I will never forget what happened next. I was completely enamored, planning a future with him, when suddenly a woman approached us. She was about my age, dressed in heels, jeans, and a leather jacket, with blonde hair and quite tall. I was so caught up in my thoughts that I hardly paid attention to her arrival or the words she hurled at him. In that moment, I understood the truth. I had been involved with a man who was not only in another relationship, but was actually married. The realization hit me hard. I had been in love with him, charmed by his personality, and completely blinded by my feelings. And there, right in front of me, was his wife, furious and confronting us both. I expected her to lash out at me physically, to drag me from my chair and humiliate me in public, but she didn't. Instead, I sat frozen, shocked by the revelation, and the sudden end of what I believed was a promising relationship. The argument between them escalated, and he left with her without even saying goodbye to me. I was left alone, my heart shattered. I checked the dating app, hoping to find some explanation or perhaps a way to contact him, only to discover his profile had been deleted. He had also removed me from his social media accounts. I was completely cut off, with no way to reach him. I felt abandoned all over again. Fresh on the heels of my divorce, now I was not only recovering from the end of my marriage, but also dealing with the pain of being deceived and left by someone I had started to believe could be my future. This turn of events left me reeling, unsure of how to move forward. The horror of the realization that the person I had dreamed of spending my life with was living a lie, and I was merely an unwitting participant in his deception, was a wake-up call. The serene setting of the coffee shop and the peaceful day had turned into a scene from my worst nightmare, a moment that would haunt me for a long time. When all this happened, I was 26, living at my folks' place. My dad had just lost his job, and my mom had injured her leg badly. On top of that, my grandma was battling cancer. It was a hard time for us all, and we came together to support one another. I had to leave my university town, where I was taking important courses, to come back home because of these family issues. I found a job at a local drugstore and started working like never before, sometimes up to 60 hours a week, always on my feet. I had just ended a difficult relationship and felt very alone, stuck at home with all this sadness around me. A few months into this routine, I decided to look online for someone to share some happy moments with. After being kicked off a dating site, why I was banned is another story altogether, which I won't get into. I joined OkCupid. On OkCupid, I eventually met a girl who seemed absolutely stunning in her photos. We messaged back and forth, and she seemed really interesting. We decided to meet up, but she was under 21 and couldn't go out for drinks, which I usually preferred on a first date. Nonetheless, I agreed to bring some drinks to her place and stopped to buy them on my way. I cleaned up, got a haircut, cleaned my car, did some shopping, printed directions to her house, and set off. The directions, however, were terribly wrong, turning what should have been a short trip into a 3-hour journey. When I finally arrived, I was shocked by the state of her house. It was in a very run-down neighborhood. As I drove up, I saw 2 teens abusing a cat with a jump rope in a parking lot near her building. It felt like a bad omen. Eventually, she came out to meet me. She wasn't exactly as her pictures had suggested. She wasn't overweight, but she was visibly unhealthy and not well kept. Her clothes were dirty and ill-fitting. Her jeans were so long they dragged on the ground and turned brown at the ends. She smelled of cigarettes and looked like she lived on fast food and too much medication. Despite being only 20, she looked much older but had a kind face. Remembering our fun conversations, I greeted her with a smile. Her smile revealed yellow teeth, the kind you'd expect from someone who frequently used them to open soda bottles. I realized I'd never seen her teeth in any of her pictures, just her body and her smiling face. As I stood there feeling foolish and desperate, I decided to just go with it. I thought to myself, nobody knew about this girl or that I was here. I could keep this secret. I had already spent so much time and effort on this. holding the six-pack and bottle of Jose like a lifeline. I convinced myself that we could get through the evening. We sat on her couch, drinking beer and watching a movie, barely talking. She told me she didn't have a job, never finished high school, and lived off government help. What struck me the most was her complete lack of ambition to change her situation. She seemed content with her life as it was. As we started drinking tequila directly from the bottle, the evening dragged on painfully for me. Eventually, we moved to her balcony, where the stars were beginning to shine brightly in the night sky. After enough drinks, I found myself less bothered by the situation. In the dim light, her face seemed okay, and I ended up kissing her. She went inside to put on some music, and soon the sound of it filled the air, making me wonder about my choices. I briefly considered escaping from the balcony, but realized how embarrassing it would be if my friends and family learned about such a dramatic exit. Things only went downhill from there. She didn't even have a proper bed, and as she got more drunk, she shared more about her troubled past. It was clear she had been through a lot. Despite the alcohol blurring my thoughts, a moment of clarity hit me. She was in a vulnerable state, and I couldn't take advantage of that. It wouldn't be right. I excused myself, claiming I needed to use a bathroom, and started drinking water straight from the tap to sober up. Looking at my reflection, I felt a wave of gratitude for my own life. I'd become her confidant for the evening, listening to her life story as we sat on a mattress on the floor. It dawned on me how alone she was, without any real guidance or care in her life. After she finished telling me about her life, I felt incredibly down. Looking at my reflection, I wondered how I ended up in such a situation. When I went back to the living room, she was asleep on her couch. I started to collect my things, shoes, wallet, keys, but noticed my money was gone. It wasn't much, and considering her situation, I just left without making a fuss. Driving back home, I realized I was still drunk and not entirely sure of the way. Soon enough, the police pulled me over. The smell of tequila was obvious, and I wasn't even wearing my shoes. Admitting to the officers that I had been drinking, I handed over my documents and took a breathalyzer test. They laughed at the results, though they didn't share them with me. It was clear I was too intoxicated to drive, but the thought of staying at her place any longer was unbearable. I regretted my decision deeply, thankful I hadn't caused any accidents. I shared my story with the police, who found humor in my misfortune. One officer made a comment about living with my parents and using their car at my age, which made me feel even worse. Eventually, I had to call my parents for a ride home, and the truck was towed. My family, already dealing with so many problems, was understandably upset. The girl continued to message me relentlessly. The next day, it became apparent she was trying to cling to me, likely the one who took the money from my wallet. Despite feeling sorry for her, I knew I couldn't be the support she needed. I wasn't in a position to help her in the ways she required. I decided to block her, realizing the importance of being more careful in the future when looking for a date. It was a hard lesson on the need for emotional stability and mental health in a partner. I reflected on the dangers of getting involved with someone facing such deep issues without the means to help them properly. The experience made me more cautious, understanding the importance of mutual respect and support in any relationship. It was a night I would never forget, a stark reminder of the unforeseen consequences that can arise from a lack of awareness. I use online dating a lot. Going out to bars to meet people isn't really my thing, and dating apps help me avoid the weird ones. A few years back, I had a pretty bad date. It wasn't the worst, but it's definitely a story you might find interesting. We met on Match.com. We seemed to get along in our messages, even though there were a few small red flags. She kept asking about my job and how much money I made. She also seemed really focused on getting compliments and showing off her wealth. Back then, I was more hopeful, so I decided to go on a date with her. We chose a nice restaurant in the middle of the city and planned to meet at 7 o'clock. I made reservations, and on the day of the date, I arrived a bit early, but she was already at the table with 3 empty glasses from her drinks and was starting on her 4th. Her pictures were pretty accurate, maybe showing her a bit thinner, but they were definitely her. She dressed up a lot, but something felt off about it. During the date, she kept bragging about the stuff she owned, places she visited, and famous people she claimed to know. She kept linking her value to her things and kept asking me about how much money I made, how expensive my apartment was, and what kind of car I drove. These were big warning signs, and they just kept getting more obvious as the date went on. When we ordered food, she picked the most expensive dish, a big seafood and steak plate. Then she ordered not one, but two more, along with more drinks for herself. She barely ate any of her food, just a few bites of the lobster, while I kept the conversation light and focused on my own meal. She talked a lot about herself and seemed very into showing off. For dessert, she ordered a chocolate treat that cost $50 and two more drinks. I just asked for a coffee. My worry was growing, not just for my money, but because I was starting to think she might have a serious problem with alcohol. She hardly touched her dessert, just like her main meal, and didn't ask to take it home. After finishing her drinks, which added up to 8 in just 2.5 hours, it was clear to me that something was deeply wrong with her. Getting closer to her seemed like a really bad idea. When the waiter came back after dessert, I made sure to say, "We'll have the checks, please," stressing the S. She said she needed to go to the restroom, just as the waiter brought 2 separate bills. I handed my card to the waiter for mine, and she stayed in the restroom until my transaction was completed. When she came back, complaining about the restroom, I told her I didn't see us going anywhere and wished her luck. As I walked to the door, she yelled out, shocked by her $400 bill. I didn't look back. That was the last I heard from her, and I hoped she would find the help she needed. Walking away that night, I remember speeding up, almost running at one point. Since that experience, I've moved from the Pacific Northwest to a suburb near Stockholm, Sweden. Here, it's common for women to pay for their own meals on a date, which I think is fair. It's all about equality, no matter who you are. While I don't mind paying for a date, this system makes sense, especially if someone is going to order so much and eat so little. I recently joined the world of online dating, choosing OkCupid to start my adventure. Not long after, a guy reached out to me. His questions oddly focused on my dental hygiene. He claimed to be studying dentistry and was curious about my teeth condition, even asking for details about any cavities. I found the conversation odd but entertaining enough to engage in, as I had nothing better to do. He soon suggested we switch to phone calls, expressing a dislike for texts and a preference for lengthy conversations. This person already seemed off to me. His profile lacked a photo or any age information, but I overlooked the potential dangers of meeting him. His insistence on meeting in person raised red flags, but against my better judgment, I agreed. I've always been a type to give in to pressure, considering myself more of a follower. We decided to meet for pizza downtown. Stepping out of my car, I was met by a man who was far from what I expected, older, overweight, and not at all like anyone I hoped to meet. He appeared to be in his 50s, dressed in oversized clothes, bald except for a hat he wore. My goal on OkCupid was to make friends and take things slowly, but he seemed to have other ideas, eagerly talking about the fun we'd have together. Curious about his hat, I asked him about it, and when he removed it, he revealed a large bump on his head, explaining it was a cyst he feared removing due to its horn-like appearance. As we ate, he kept hinting at strange plans he had for me, which made me feel really uncomfortable. After the meal, instead of taking me back to where my car was parked, he had driven us there. I found myself trapped in a bizarre situation. He wanted to check my teeth right then and there. Despite my attempts to decline, he was persistent and wouldn't take no for an answer. His skill in steering the conversation left me powerless, as I've always struggled to assert myself. He prepared himself with purple gloves, a light strap to his forehead, and a belt full of tools from his car's glove compartment. Sitting in his car, panic set in as I realized the gravity of my predicament. The thought of escaping crossed my mind, but fear paralyzed me, imagining him chasing after me with his dental tools in hand. In that moment, I feared for my life, believing it might end in his car. He proceeded to use his tools on me, even taking pictures of my teeth, claiming they would serve as examples for a class he was teaching. When he finally finished, he suggested we get more intimate, but I lied about having a boyfriend to escape the situation. He dismissed my lie, claiming he'd be a better partner and insisting on secrecy. That's when I knew I had to escape. I grabbed the car door handle, yanked it open with such force I might have broken it, and ran as fast as I could. I didn't look back, even though I feared he might come after me with his tools. But I realized quickly that I could outrun him. He was significantly overweight and had trouble breathing heavily from just examining my teeth. Whether his obsession with dental care was a fetish or he was indeed a dental student, the collection of dental equipment in his car was alarming. But after his unsettling suggestions, it was clear he was not just any ordinary person with a hobby or interest in dentistry. Next, I was around 19 years old when I met Lily. The exact age slips my mind, but one thing I can't forget is how a girl both broke my heart and shocked me all at once. This might not sound like your typical first date scare, but bear with me. Let's call her Lily, far from her real name, but her identity needs to be kept secret despite the slim chance of anyone recognizing her. What she did was utterly wrong. For about 5 years, I had been writing blog posts about fitness and running. That's how I bumped into Lily. She found me through the website where I shared my posts. My routine included participating in 5K and 10K races, and occasionally a marathon. It seemed fate played a part because she stumbled upon my blog, which wasn't exactly a hit, barely attracting 100 visitors daily. It felt like a stroke of luck when she reached out via the email linked to my blog. Initially, Lily sought advice on training. Considering I offered coaching services on my site and had a fair bit of experience despite my age, it wasn't unusual. I was coaching a diverse group of runners at that time. Soon enough, we exchanged phone numbers and started chatting on WhatsApp. Our conversation swiftly moved from running and training to more personal topics like relationships and flirting. One evening, she sent a photo of herself dressed in a nurse's outfit. That moment, I knew something was up, though I couldn't pinpoint why she'd do something like that. In today's dating scene, some might expect monetary gain or something similar from such actions. Being 19 and without any prior girlfriend experience, I was intrigued yet confused. Part of me wondered if it was some test or maybe a friend or family member messing with me. I confirmed she was real afterward. She was from the north, while I was living in the south of the UK. For context, Lily often expressed a desire to move in with me, mentioning that her father had died when she was young and she couldn't even recall his face. As we continued chatting, Lily's messages became a mix of warmth and mystery. She shared stories of her lonely life up north, painting a picture of a girl desperate for connection. I felt a pull toward her, a mix of curiosity and empathy. Our nightly conversations became my escape from the mundane reality of my own life. She had a way of making everything seem intense and meaningful. One day, Lily mentioned wanting to visit me. The thought thrilled and terrified me at the same time. Meeting her would turn our virtual connection into reality. Yet something about her story didn't sit right. She was vague about her past and hesitant to share details about her current life. It was as if she was hiding something. But my young mind brushed aside the doubts, blinded by the prospect of no longer being alone. We started planning her visit. The conversations about this potential meeting were filled with excitement, but also an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite grasp. It was as though, with each message, Lily was weaving a web, drawing me closer into her world, a world that, unbeknownst to me, was far from the simple connection I had initially sought. This part of our story doesn't end here, but as I look back, I realized it was the beginning of horror I had never anticipated, one that started with broken heart but led down a much darker path. Lily shared with me that she was living with her grandmother and her 3 sisters because her mother was in jail. It was a tough situation that had thrown her into deep sadness, and running was suggested by her therapist as a way to help. But as we talked more, I sensed that Lily wasn't really into running or training. It seemed like she was more interested in starting a relationship with me. It's worth mentioning that I used to post videos on my blog, so Lily knew exactly what I looked like. I wouldn't say I was model material, but I had good hair, stood tall at 6 feet 4 inches, and had a strong build, not too skinny, not overweight. I'd rate myself a 7 or 8 out of 10. Lily was persistent, and eventually I agreed to a video call. She looked just like her photos, and I'll admit I was drawn to her. It was confusing and a bit embarrassing. I'd never felt this way before. My life had been strict and sheltered, almost like a modern-day version of a very conservative lifestyle. Lily's talk of moving in with me and starting a family was overwhelming. I tried explaining that living down south was much more expensive, but it didn't deter her. Over time, through nightly video calls that sometimes lasted hours, we grew closer. Lily worked part-time in a cafe, which made scheduling calls easy. I didn't work a traditional job, earning my income through coaching and my website. It was going well. We shared our training progress, and she was always supportive. Eventually, I couldn't deny my feeling for her anymore. This was no scam or ploy. I had genuinely fallen for her. 2 months in, Lily was making serious efforts to move south. She pressured me to meet her in person. Considering the depth of our connection, I felt meeting was the right step. After all, you can't maintain a relationship through screens forever. We needed to meet face to face. Despite my reserved nature, I had the height, the passion, and the confidence. Plus, we shared a love for running. It seemed like meeting her would be the next natural step in our growing relationship. The excitement of finally seeing Lily in person was mixed with nervous anticipation, unaware of the horror that awaited us as our virtual connection collided with reality. So there I was, faced with the big question of where and how to meet Lily, who lived a daunting 400 miles away. The options were swirling in my mind. Meet halfway, have her come to me, or make the long journey north myself. Driving such a distance was a huge undertaking, not to mention the cost of fuel and possibly staying overnight. This was all new to me. I'd never planned anything like this before. Now it was time to dive into this new experience with all the courage I could muster. I started preparing in earnest. I updated my wardrobe, cleaned my car thoroughly, and took extra care of my appearance. My business and training even saw a boost from the newfound motivation Lily's presence in my life gave me. It felt like I had someone to impress and provide for. Now, our nightly conversations went on until I decided the best plan was for Lily to come down by train, and I would cover the cost of an Airbnb near the seaside. The south coast of the UK has some beautiful spots, and I found a place that was perfect for us. Even though it would set me back around £500 or $1,800, to me it was worth every penny to finally meet her. Confident as I was that she wasn't deceiving me, Lily was on board with the plan. We checked train schedules and prices, and I contacted an Airbnb host who had a flat with an incredible sea view. The booking was made for £290 for 3 nights. On top of that, I had to think about food and other necessities. My dad even pitched in to help, seeing how nervous and excited I was. The anticipation was so intense that I barely slept the 2 nights before her arrival, which made training almost impossible. I decided to take a few days off to focus solely on Lily. Everything was set: stylish clothes, nice cologne, a sparkling car, and a well-groomed appearance. But then, just 24 hours before she was supposed to arrive, Lily sent me a message on WhatsApp. My heart sank as I read that she had been rushed to the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. I was stunned and initially didn't know what to feel. Reflecting on the beginning of this story, I mentioned it wasn't a typical first date horror story, and here's why. She never showed up. The timing was so close to our planned meeting that the Airbnb host refused to refund me. I was out nearly £300 for the Airbnb, plus £50 for food and another £50 for her train ticket. Despite my disbelief, I was also deeply concerned for her. Throughout our conversations, Lily had always been communicative, often calling and sending updates about her life and training. But after her message about the hospital, she went silent for 3 days. In my mind, I tried to rationalize her silence, thinking she must have been too ill or busy to be on her phone. The worry and confusion mixed with the sting of financial loss and disappointment created a whirlwind of emotions. Yet this was only the beginning of a series of events that would unravel into a true horror I had never anticipated. After all the effort and waiting, I started to feel that Lily was avoiding meeting me. It had been 2 weeks since the hospital incident, and she hadn't looked at any of my messages. I had sent about 20, all left unread. It seemed like she was deliberately avoiding my messages, or even the app itself. Then, one day, I decided to call her, and to my surprise, she answered. There she was, sitting on her bed, looking perfectly fine. Without beating around the bush, I asked her to show me the scar from her surgery. She refused and immediately hung up after her face turned red. I was left wondering why she was scared. Had she changed her mind about us? Maybe her family had influenced her decision to stay back. I had lost about 350 pounds to 400 pounds on arrangements for her visit, including her train ticket, and I told her about my losses. Fast forward 2 years, we were still friends on Facebook, although I had blocked her on everything else. I rarely use Facebook, but one day when I logged in, I was bombarded with messages and notifications. Among them, I saw updates from Lily. She had gotten pregnant by another guy and was now in a legal battle with him over child support. It seemed I had narrowly avoided a serious mess. You might be wondering why I feel I dodged a bullet. Well, during our more intimate conversations, parts one initially hesitated to include in this story, she had insisted I never needed to use protection. She claimed to have a condition that rendered her eggs basically dead and that she always took contraceptive pills because she couldn't have a normal period, implying she was infertile. I had looked up her condition back then, and it seemed legitimate. But reflecting on it now, I suspect she might have been trying to get pregnant on purpose, possibly to trap someone financially. This might sound like a conspiracy theory, but I genuinely believe she had plans to use pregnancy as a means to avoid working. If things had gone differently, and she had actually made the trip, I could have been tied to a situation I never wanted. This realization hit me just a few days ago. She was everything I dreamed of, until the shocking truth about her past turned my world upside down. This line teases a mystery and emotional twist, enticing people to want to read or watch further. Let me know if you'd like something different. I request you to please like my video and subscribe my channel, and give your remarks in comment section. It will motivate me to give you best true stories.